Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of the newspaper analysis from the civil service examinations perspective. So today we are going to discuss the Hindu Daily edition dated 27th June 2023. The important topics which are to be discussed have been displayed on your screen, and the timestamp of the same has been provided in the description box below. So now let us begin our today's session. So first of all, there is an important announcement for all of you. Raus IAS has launched 10 series for the Political Science and International Relations optional subject. There will be 8 tests in the test series and you will get a timely and detailed evaluation of your attempt. This whole program is going to be under the mentorship of Mr. Rahul Puri sir. You will get personal attention and can discuss your queries and doubts with the Raus IAS teachers. There is a link in the description which has more details so you can join the program and boost your preparation for the mains exam. The second announcement is in relation to the mains revision classes. Raus IAS will be conducting mains revision classes for 2023 mains exam. Many of you would be aware of the fact that these classes have boosted the performance of many top rankers in the past like Anandya Rashri, Namrata Chaube and Pooja Jha and helped them to score ranks in top 100. So, what will be the features of this program? First, there will be around 150 hours of live online classes which will help you in revising all the important themes of all subjects in question answer discussion mode. 2. There will be unlimited one-to-one mentorship from teachers of Raus IAS. 3. There will be a test series which will simulate the exam-like experience multiple times before you take the actual exam. Plus, timely and detailed feedback will help you to write your best answers. 4. You will also get all the notes from the teachers' classes to help you revise all the topics. There will be 4 hours of classes every day from Monday to Friday. Respected teachers like Mr. Basava Upin, Faizan Khan, Arun Bhardwaj, I, Gaurav Tripathi, Shashank, Vaibhav Mishra sir, Mr. Ankit Kaul, and Mr. Jatin Bhardwaj are looking forward to help you get top ranks once more in 2023. So enroll for the course and boost your chances to score your best. There is a link in the description and you can know more by clicking on that. This topic has appeared at page number 1 as well as page number 12 in today's The Hindu Daily edition. And as you can see, this topic is in the context of the recent flash floods which has devastated the areas of state of Himachal Pradesh as well as Haryana. And this is the very context of this news article. On June 26, the Chandigarh-Manali highway was blocked because of the flash floods and landslides in parts of Haryana as well as Himachal Pradesh. Now, when it comes to the UPSC scheme of syllabus, this topic finds its relevance in General Studies Mains Paper 3 section of Disaster Management. Also, if you go by the previous year question paper analysis, every year around 1 to 2 questions are asked from the related themes. For example, in 2022, the question was asked, explain the mechanism and occurrence of the cloudbursts in the context of the Indian subcontinent, and you were asked to cite 2 recent examples also. Similarly, in 2021, the question was asked in relation to the landslides. The question said that describe the various causes and effects of the landslides, mention the important components of national landslide risk management strategy. So the idea is that the questions are not just focusing on the management of such disasters, they are also asking the mechanism, causes as well as effects of such disasters. And that is why, because in the previous DNS we have already discussed that how to prevent and manage floods. Today what we are going to discuss is different types of disasters to which our Himalayan region are particularly vulnerable. And you will see that how just one disaster, for example flash floods, can bring several other disasters also. And because of the higher vulnerability of the Himalayan region, this cause and effect relationship, this chain of disasters become very disastrous. So that is why first we should understand that what is flash floods. But before understanding the flash floods, we should understand that what is floods. So let us understand this with the help of a diagram. Suppose this is a river channel, the vertical cross section of the river channel, and the river is flowing in this. These side areas are the embankments, or you can say the boundaries, which can also be known as the natural levees, and that is why the river water is flowing within this channel. This is the river channel, right? Now let us assume various causes. For example, one of the causes is excessive rainfall. Now, as we know that in India, more than 80% of the rainfall is concentrated within just 4 months, that is June, July, August, as well as September. So, because the rainfall in India is not very much well distributed in space as well as time, this higher intensity and higher concentration of rainfall in this particular river channel can increase the levels of the river, and therefore as the river levels will increase, it can spill to the nearby areas, submerging the nearby areas, and this situation is called as floods. So if we understand that these are floods, that is the spilling of the river water away from the river channels to the nearby areas causing the submergence, if these are known as floods, then what will be the flash floods? Flash floods are nothing, they are just the floods but within a very short span of time as well as within a very short area. Therefore, in a way, we can call that these floods, these flash floods, are very localized in nature. The National Weather Agency says that when the rainfall causes floods within the period of 6 hours or less than 6 hours, those floods can be known as flash floods. So now in this particular video you can see the intensity of the flash floods which has devastated several areas in the particular states. And this causes a huge loss to lives as well as properties in these areas, and to manage these flash floods becomes very important. Now if you understand that what do we mean by flash floods, can you guess that which will be the areas which are more vulnerable to these disasters in India? Obviously, these will be the hills as well as the mountainous regions, and therefore flash floods are very common in certain areas, that is Himalayas, northeastern hills, as well as the peninsular plateau in the Meghalaya region, that is the Garo Khasi and Jaintia hills, and last the western Ghats. So these areas are most vulnerable to the flash floods, and out of all these, Himalayas, and that too the western part of the Himalayas, that is the state of Jammu Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, they are the most vulnerable to the flash floods, right? In association with this flash floods, now let us come to the other disaster, which is cloudburst. In India, one of the largest reasons for the flash floods is cloudburst, which in itself is also a disaster. So flash floods many a times is the outcome of this cloudburst. That is why when we started this session, I told you that today we are going to see that how multiple disasters in the Himalayan region are linked to each other and how it causes a chain reaction. So now what is cloudburst? To understand cloudburst, first we need to understand the basic concept of precipitation or the rainfall. So let us understand this. How rainfall occurs? Rainfall occurs, basically let us assume that this is the surface having certain amount of water, let's say oceans, rivers, ponds, lakes, etc. So because of the presence of insolation, this water will get heated up. Because the warmer air is lighter in nature, so the warm air will be rising up and it will carry these waters to a certain height. As soon as these water change into water vapors, that is gas which is light in nature, they will be carried up. And we also know that whenever the air moves up, there is a marked reduction in the temperature with the ascent of the air, which is known as the normal lapse rate, right? So as soon as the water vapor which is rising up begins to cool because of the lower temperature, the condensation process will begin. Once this condensation process begins, then what happens? A latent heat of condensation is released, which again pushes the water vapor upward, and here we have the formation of clouds. Correct? So when the carrying capacity of these clouds is breached, then this water come down as the in the form of rainfall, right? So this is how the rainfall or precipitation occurs. This is the basic phenomena. We are not going into very much detail. So this is the basic phenomena how rainfall occurs. Now let us understand that what is cloudburst. First, an important thing to understand the cloudburst is that it is just a rainfall, but very intense rainfall, and that too again restricted in spatial as well as temporal sense. So that means a high intensity rainfall is occurring over a local area. Again, therefore, this is a localized phenomena and for a short duration of time. So if the cloudburst is a form of rainfall, then obviously the basic process will remain same, which we have discussed. But there will be just one difference, and that difference will actually lead to higher intensity of this rainfall. Now what happens in cloudburst? Now let us again assume this to be the surface, right? On this surface we are having the water present in form of lakes, ponds, oceans, etc., rivers, right? Now what will happen? Because of the higher insolation, this water will be moving up, right? But the areas which experience this cloudburst is characterized by one very important condition, which is the strong updraft of air. Okay, so the air currents which are moving in the vertical direction are very dominant, they are very strong. That is why they are able to carry this water vapor to the height. But they are very dominant. Now keep this thing in mind, right? Now, how this updraft of air can be so strong? What can be the conditions? For example, there can be a very intense localized heating, right? Because of which the high intensity convection currents can be formed. Similarly, there can be an orographic upliftment. Now, what is this orographic upliftment? Basically, suppose this is the mountain, the winds were coming, and as soon as they hit this particular slope of the mountains, they will be forced to rise up. So, this is the orographic upliftment. Orographic means mountainous. So this upliftment is caused because of the mountain and hence orographic upliftment. So depending upon the degree of the slope, this updraft of air can be very strong. More the degree of slope, more vertical the column rises, right? So now these can be the reasons because of which the updraft or the rise of the column in the vertical direction is very dominant. Now again, let us assume that here the clouds are formed. Again, the areas which experience cloudburst, again, these clouds also have typical characteristics. These clouds are known as cumulonimbus clouds. So these cumulonimbus clouds are very dark, very dense, right? So the clouds are formed and then they will release the water in the downward direction. But now here there lies a difference. This water will be released in downward direction, but still they will not be able to come to the surface. The reason being the upgoing wind, the vertical ascent of wind is very dominant and they are not allowing the water to come down, and that is why let us assume that there is an imaginary line over here. So all the water will be collected at this particular level because up to this area there is a strong vertical current of the wind. Now as soon as this vertical updraft of the wind weakens, suddenly this whole huge amount of water comes down, and that is why the intensity increases multifold, and this is restricted to only this particular region because these were the local conditions. Obviously it cannot happen that in a very large region there is so much strong updraft of air that it is not allowing the water to come down. So that is why it is very a localized phenomena in a small space for a small duration of time. So this is the cloudburst. Now can you link cloudburst with the flash floods? Obviously, if high intensity of rainfall is occurring in a particular area for a particular time, this can increase the levels of rivers, which in turn can lead to the flash flood conditions, that is within a very short span of period, that is 6 hours, the floods can be generated. So again, here the one disaster, that is cloud floods, has created the other disaster, that is the flash floods. Right? Now let us move towards our next disaster, which is the glacial lake outburst floods. Again, a type of floods, but the mechanism will be different. For this to understand, let us revise the basics, that what is basically a glacier. So glacier is a moving mass of ice. So if you focus on this terminology, glacial lake outburst floods, you can understand that these floods are being created due to the outburst of the glacial lakes. If we understand the glacier, then what will be the glacial lake? The lakes which are formed out of these moving masses of ice, out of the glaciers. How can these lakes be formed? Now let us assume that this was the moving glacier, right? And at the end of this glacier, there was melting. At the front of this glacier, there was a hole, there was a large hole, and because of this melting, the melt water of this glacier got collected in this large hollow region, and this led to the formation of lake. Now because this lake was formed out of the melted water of glacier, and hence this can be known as the glacial lakes, right? So now these types of lakes can form in various regions. They can be formed in the front of these glaciers. They can also be formed in the side of these glaciers. They can also be formed on the surface of these glaciers as well as beneath the surface of these glaciers. Depending upon their location, they have different names. For example, here they are known as pro-glacial lakes. Here they are known as supraglacial lakes. Here they are known as subglacial lakes. So the thing is that they have different names. However, all these are the glacial lakes. So now again, let us assume that at one particular point of time, there was a very high intensity or very huge amount of glacier which got melted, which can be because of, let's say, a strong heat wave, change in the climate, etc. So if there is a huge melting of the glacier, then there will be sudden increase in the level of the volume of water in this lake, and as soon as the volume level will increase, again it will outpour all the water. There will be an outburst. That is why this is known as the glacial lake outburst floods, right? Similarly, now how this glacial lake outburst floods are related to cloudburst? They are related if there is a high intensity of rainfall here in a particular region, and if this region is, let's say, this glacial lake, and a huge intensity of rainfall is coming. So don't you think that the volume will increase in this lake? So, what we have learnt is that this increase in the volume in the glacial lakes can be because of the cloudburst, excessive rain, can be because of the huge melting of glaciers, right? Now think that can't this outburst be because of earthquakes? Again, a new disaster, but I am not discussing that what are earthquakes. It is very basic. But just let us imagine that the ground level on which this glacial lake was formed, if there is an earthquake, which can again cause the land to slip, or the bottom of this glacial lakes, if it gets displaced, don't you think that all this lake will be broken, and hence it can lead to the outburst of the floods? So here you can relate the glacial lake outburst floods with the earthquakes as well as with the landslips or landslides, right? Also, let us relate it with the dams. So in case there is a huge rainfall, in case there is a dam failure, and let's say if there was a presence of a glacial lake on the upstream side of the dam, if this dam gets failed, don't you think that it will directly impact the glacial lakes? Similarly, let us think about the landslides. Now just think, if there is a landslide in a particular region, let us assume that this was a mountain and there was a landslide on this particular slope. So this landslide will be bringing with it huge amount of debris, sediments, rocks, boulders. And now let us imagine that here we were having this glacial lake. So all this will eventually be deposited over here. As soon as it enters the lake, the volume will increase, the level will increase, and this will lead to floods, right? Similarly, the cloudburst, because it is an high intensity rainfall on the mountainous slopes, again can create landslides, which again can create glacial lake outburst floods. Similarly, the earthquakes can also lead to landslides, again initiating the chain reaction. In a similar fashion, this flash floods can also be generated because of these disasters. So, point for you to understand is that all the discussion on the mechanisms of multiple disasters will make you aware about the higher vulnerability of the Himalayan region and the amount of challenge which Indian agency, especially the National Disaster Management Authority, faces in this regard, right? So this was all regarding various disasters which were mentioned in this news article. The heading mentioned only the flash floods, but when you read this article, there was a mention of landslides, cloudburst, etc. So that is why it becomes important for you to understand the basics of all such types of disasters. This topic has appeared at page number 10 and is in relation to the mob lynching by a group of cow vigilants. This is the very immediate context that a 32-year-old man was lynched allegedly by a group of cow vigilants on suspicions of transporting the beef in Nashik district of Maharashtra. Now, as far as this article is concerned, it can be dealt from two perspectives. One is General Studies Mains Paper 2 from the legal perspective, and the second is General Studies Mains Paper 4 from the ethics perspective. So in today's session, we will be dealing this topic from the perspective of General Studies Paper 4, that is ethics. And hence, we will see that what are the various ethical issues which are involved in mob lynching, which you can write as it is in your answers. So first issue is that whenever there is a case of mob lynching in India or in any part of the world, it shows that the community is getting more and more intolerant. So the intolerance is rising in a society, and that is why it does not matter that whether it was transporting the beef or not. The thing is, whatever it was transporting, are we accommodating it or not? Are we tolerant for it or not? Are we tolerant for other people's food habits or not? Or are we dominating our own culture on someone else? So this increasing intolerance is one of the most pressing concern when it comes to the ethical values, not only just of the individual but also of the society. The second issue is the lack of empathy. We are living in a civilized world, we are getting educated, our economy is rising, the technology is on boom, and we are becoming more and more social. But this is restricted to the social media only. In person, in our personal lives, the values like sympathy and empathy are getting reduced. And such incidents are the extreme forms of reduction in empathy. When hundreds of people are gathering and they are killing one or two person, it shows that up to what level the value of empathy, compassion, love, etc. have fallen. The third issue is not from just the individual or community perspective, but it also shows the failure of the state. If any country is saying that it is a welfare oriented state, believing in the principles of equality, liberty, fraternity, etc., it becomes the duty of the state to protect each and every person who is residing in the state's territory. And that is why the state is under moral as well as legal obligation to ensure their safety. But such cases show the sheer failure of the state's administrative capacity and breakdown of the law and order. Fourth is the lack of wisdom. Now, even you have witnessed this, that in the newspapers or in the news, either on the print media or the electronic media, most of these mob lynching incidents are based just on rumors or propagandas. They are based on the fake news. And believing on such unidentified sources of information shows the clear lack of wisdom among the individuals. We are getting educated, but what about wisdom? There is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. We are getting the information, we are living in a world which is surplus of information, but are we wise enough? Do we have the capability to think on the basis of our value systems that the action which we are going to take or someone else is taking, is it right or wrong? Is it moral or immoral? So there is a lack of wisdom. And last is that such practices obviously are against the greatest good, because it in the long run can promote the hatred in the society. The incidents of mob lynching turn the community against the other community, which may harm the peace in the society. And in this regard, there should be certain immediate steps as well as the long term steps which should be taken. Immediate steps are the strict action must be taken. The culprits who have committed this crime must be behind the bars and they must be produced to the courts. These courts must work on the fast track principles. Fast track courts must be established to deal with such special things because they are going to have a very long term impact on Indian society. And use of persuasion. Persuasion should be used by the administration in order to bring the harmony. They can persuade the spiritual leaders of both the communities and ask them to support the administration to maintain the peace, harmony, law and order. In the long term, government must come up with the specific laws dealing with the mob lynching, having clear-cut provisions, clear-cut punishments, the mechanism for trial for those culprits, etc. Second is the value-based education must be promoted since from the childhood, and this should not be restricted to the schools only. It should be there in the family. They should be there in the broader societal level because a child does not learn only from the school. Family is the first teacher for any child. School and society are equal teachers. So, value based education must be there at all levels. Effective administration. The law enforcement agencies as well as the administrative authorities must be on toe. They must work, they must bring certain long term policies which can tackle such issues. For this, community policing can be a very good tool because community policing is based on the principles of trust as well as participation. So such steps can help in order to tackle such issues and you can write such type of ethical issues and way forward in your mains answer. This topic has appeared at page number 6 in the article section. The topic reads laying the foundation for a future ready digital India. Now this topic basically is in the context of the Digital India Bill which government is thinking to come up in order to upgrade the current legal regime as well as redefining the technological contours that how it is going to be regulated. And therefore, Ministry of Electronics and IT is organizing the consultations on the proposed Digital India Bill in order to replace 23-year-old Information Technology Act. Now, this topic is mainly relevant from the perspective of General Studies Mains Paper 3 because there we have Science and Tech section also. Also, it is relevant from the General Studies Mains Paper 2 because it is dealing with an important piece of legislation too, which is going to affect our privacy. But the thing is that in much detail, this topic can only be done once the government comes up with this particular bill. Until then, because we are not aware about the various provisions of this bill, so obviously we cannot go into much deeper analysis. Despite this fact, the key important points which are mentioned in today's article, we can discuss them. So the author has said that there are certain important proposed changes which are going to take place in this Digital India Bill. What are those changes? Now, first understand that currently the Information Technology Act defines an intermediary as any entity or person between the user as well as the internet. So, for example, let's say I am the user of internet and here is the internet. So, any entity which is providing, let's say, this internet connection to me will be considered as intermediary under the present IT Act. But here, the Digital India Bill is proposing a significant change that it wants to categorize various digital intermediaries into distinct classes such as e-commerce players, who are social media companies, who are just the search engines. And it is being done in order to place different responsibilities because obviously we cannot expect that Amazon, which is the e-commerce player, and Facebook, which is the social media company, so the responsibilities and liabilities of both these platforms should differ, right? Because by nature they are operating in a different manner. So that is why this is a significant change which is proposed under this bill. Under the IT Act, presently the IT rules subclassify intermediaries into three main categories. That is the social media intermediaries, significant social media intermediaries, that is those social media intermediaries which have a very large user base, and the online gaming intermediaries. But then there is a challenge in this act or in these rules, and that is why the government is coming up with the new bill. What are those challenges? One, the definition is very broad. The definition of SMIs, that is the social media intermediaries, which are considered as a platforms that facilitate the communication and sharing of information between the users. Now, this definition is very broad. The reason being, if we go by this definition, then various services such as video communications, matrimonial websites, email, and even the online comment sections on the websites will be considered as the social media intermediary. Why? Because they are facilitating the communication and sharing of information between the users. Second is very stringent obligations. The IT rules lay down stringent obligations for most of these intermediaries. For example, 72-hour timeline for responding to the law enforcement requests and resolving the content takedown requests, because many a time this is misused. Various political parties in power order such entities to take down the content, and they have to do it in the 72 hours, and this period of time is very less when it comes to investigating the matter. So without proper investigation, the content is taken down from these websites. And the third issue we have discussed, there's similar treatment for different platforms. For example, internet service providers, websites, e-commerce platforms, cloud services, all are treated similarly. So treating these intermediaries like conventional social media platforms not only adds to their cost of doing business, but also exposes them to greater liability without meaningfully reducing their risks. So these are certain challenges. However, obviously this topic will be covered in much detail once we are with this Digital India bill and what are various provisions which government will come up under this bill.